Why? Why were we made to suffer? Kodansha, why are you delaying the Sailor Moon Eternal Edition manga again? It was supposed to come out in January, and then it got delayed to April, and then it got delayed again to September. Who knows if it'll be delayed again? Oh, I just want to pay for the Sailor Moon manga for the third time. I just want to throw my money at you, Kodansha. Why, Kodansha? Why? Well, then again, I have all this other manga I could review. I guess I'll do that. And here's the lovely, lovely haul. I have about 16 volumes here, which means I am averaging about 5 volumes a month. Definitely not as much as I used to collect, but I think I'm going to be a manga collector for life, you guys. It's kind of scary. First up, we got Cardcaptor Soccer, Volume 2 of the Clear Card arc. As I mentioned in the last video, this series is gorgeous. I love it. It's a really great sequel to the beloved Cardcaptor Sakura manga. It does away with a lot of the problems of the first manga, although I'm a little bit concerned, as I mentioned last time, that it could end up in Clamp-itis sequel territory, where as a sequel, it's just not going to be as good as the first one. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't think Clear Card Arc is going to be as good as the original series, but that's not me bashing it either. I'm really looking forward to seeing where the story goes. A new character is introduced in this volume who's very, very interesting, I will say. I love her character design. I don't want to talk about her too much for spoilers' sake, but let's just say it seems like she's going to be a sort of rival for Sakura in the future in a way that I don't think we've ever seen a character be a rival for Sakura before. She's not antagonistic, she's very soft, she's very sweet. She's kind of like a clone of Sakura, which I almost wonder is not because of bad writing, but because of, I don't know, spoiler reasons or something like that. Either way, really looking forward to future volumes of this series. It's great. Next up, we got Children of the Whales. Now, I will say, this is one of those instances where I picked up a manga volume purely because of its cover art. I mean, this is just gorgeous. I know there's 3 volumes of Children of the Whales out right now. I've only picked up the first one, and yeah, let me just say the art continues to be gorgeous inside of the comic too. For those who don't know, this is a story about a group of children who live on an island called, I think it's called the Mud Whale, and they sail around in a desert ocean. And something particular about this island is if you're a certain kind of magic user on the island, you die far earlier than those who cannot use magic. And so there's a bit of a mystery there as to why people die so early, what this world is actually like, why they haven't seen other people in this world. And it's really, really interesting. Story isn't as awesome as I thought it would be. I mean, it's definitely not as incredible as this art, but I think I might continue the series just because of the art alone. I mean, gosh, look at that. That's so beautiful. Speaking of beautiful things, next up we got, and I'm going to completely butcher this title, Sulul Arun? I don't know how to pronounce that. Goodness gracious. Otherwise known as The Girl from the Other Side. There's a couple volumes here that I'm going to tell you I recommend. This is a high recommendation, though, for me. Girl from the Other Side is a very, very particular manga. For those of you who like fantasy, slice of life, and a little bit of horror, like this is the more mature version of The Ancient Magus's Bride. Of course, The Ancient Magus's Bride, I should clarify, is also a bit of romance. This is obviously not. It has to deal with an older teacher-like creature and a very, very young girl. And man, it's just flipping gorgeous. I will say I recently spent the night at one of my friends' places, and I wake up like really, really early in the morning. It's kind of obnoxious. I don't get that much sleep. And I read their volumes when I was waiting for them to wake up. And man, I'm at the end of volume 4 right now, and I'm just like, I want more. I want more of this series. It's so good. Again, high recommendation for me, especially for those of you guys who like a little bit of horror mixed in with your fantasy. Next, we got JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Volume 6 of Stardust Crusaders, featuring the lovely Muhammad Abdul, who is a very rare example of a Muslim character in manga. Unfortunately, much like Christian characters who randomly appear in manga, his faith is never really explored. In fact, it seems almost just kind of like a trinket because, as some of you know who have read Stardust Crusaders, Muhammad is or Abdul as he's called in the manga, is a fortune teller, and he uses tarot cards, which is like kind of not a Muslim thing to do. It's, I think, kind of against Islam, actually, which, again, pretty interesting. My camera, as usual, is freaking out over Abdul's face. It's trying to recognize it, just showing once again how amazing Hirohiko Araki's art really is. Again, if you like JoJo, pick it up. If you don't, I'm going to use a little bit of caution here. I might recommend the anime more than the manga, which I know is like blasphemy for some people. But these volumes cost about $20 full retail. And it's a lot of money for somebody just reading it for the first time. So watch a few episodes of the anime, watch like parts 1 and 2 and a little bit into 3, and see if you like it. Next we got Lando Lustrous, Volume 5, and finally, we are at a point that we are finally beyond the gorgeous, awesome anime. Lando Lustrous, as I've said on this channel before, is an absolute high recommendation from me. It's a gorgeous series, and this volume kind of starts the trend of what I like to call like the slow part of Land of the Lustrous. Not necessarily bad, just kind of slow. But on rereads, I've noticed that I've started to pick up on a few things here and there. Like Fos makes decisions and makes choices in this volume that set up a lot of things in future volumes. And it's really, really cool to see, again, on rereads where the story goes, because you can really see like in certain characters' reactions and certain things in the background and certain things just mentioned here and there, that the answers were kind of in front of us the whole time. Again, Land of the Lustrous is always a high recommendation for me. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous series. Speaking of which, big shout out to my friend Ian for the super late Christmas gift, the Pseudo Morph of Love, which is a Land of the Lustrous art book. And let me just say here, looking at this cover alone, you can kind of see that, yeah, Land of the Lustrous is not a kid's series, but not in like a gross way. It's just kind of like the author is really, really fond of drawing their characters in a way that's like very sexual, but not gross. It's kind of hard to describe, but I mean, you can kind of see it here. I mean, they're living gems, so it's kind of hard to make them sexual, but it's absolutely gorgeous. Art books are one of those things where, you know, you kind of don't need to read Japanese in order to enjoy them. So again, really big shout out to my friend Ian. This is absolutely gorgeous. Thank you so much for this. Really, really, I mean, oh, it's just so pretty, and I'm so happy that I have it. Just absolutely love it. Speaking of Land of the Lustrous, though, I'm going to be reviewing the Japanese version of Volume 8, which has a major spoiler on the cover. I won't be talking about spoilers in that section, but if you want to avoid that cover in particular, just skip ahead to this time code. All right, here we go. So here is Volume 8 of Land of the Lustrous, the Japanese edition. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, you would know that I started collecting the Japanese volumes in particular because I didn't think this series was ever going to come out in the States, but of course, as you guys know, the anime came out, and now it's super popular, which I think is just fantastic. This volume in particular covers a later part of the series. Obviously, you can see Fos here looking a little bit different than in some of the other volumes. Yes, Fos continues to grow, but man, let me tell you, with the stuff that's going on right now in this volume and in future chapters, it seems like we're hitting the end of the series, and man, some of the stuff that's been revealed, I'm just like, whew. Land of the Lustrous is one of those rare manga where the answers are actually like worth the hype. So if you're on the fence about whether or not to read the manga after the anime, I definitely recommend checking out. It's absolutely gorgeous. But at the same time, if you want to wait for that season 2 with its popularity right now, in my opinion, I think there is going to be a season 2, and it's probably going to be worth the wait. This was another gift by my friend Ian, so thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. You're the best. Next up is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, Volume 3. This is another manga that I picked up for my classroom. The Zelda manga in particular is really, really solid. It's definitely kid-friendly, so I picked it up, and I absolutely love Akira Himekawa's adaptation of Twilight Princess. This team of authors used to kind of do either 1 or 2 volume versions of the games in manga format, but now they're sticking to like a really long form format for Twilight Princess. In fact, they're only on the 2nd dungeon here in this book. Like, they haven't even gotten past the 2nd dungeon at that, and it's good. It is gosh darn good. In particular, I really, really like the characterization of the ogre captain and of the mysterious skeleton that Link meets, who first appears in a golden wolf form. The manga does a really, really good job with those two characters. Again, if you're a huge fan of Twilight Princess, check out this version of the story. You won't be disappointed. Speaking of disappointment, hello, Maiden Abyss, and everybody get your pitchforks ready, because I'm sorry, guys, I didn't like it. I should clarify, I feel bad about not liking it. It's not like oh, haha, I think this sucks and you should feel bad if you like it. In fact, I think it's great if you like Maiden Abyss. I can see why people like this series. I mean, the art's gorgeous. The world in particular is really, really fascinating. I like the main character. I like the characters that she meets. I think it's cool that we have a perspective from, I believe she's 12 years old, although she looks like she's like 6. Therein lies the problem, though. Now, I should clarify, I understand that there are differences in culture in Japan and here in the West. And I understand that, like, there's certain things that are seen as being not so bad over there and obviously a lot worse over here and vice versa. There's a scene in the first volume where the main character is put in a very compromising situation sexually, and I was just not a fan of the way it was drawn. And I understand that, like, some people don't think that this is a sexually compromising sort of scene. Some people do. There's been a lot of arguments back and forth as to whether it is or it isn't. I'm on team it is, and to be honest with you, I'm really not a fan of it. That being said, though, I think if you enjoy this series, I don't think that's a bad thing, and I don't think you're a bad person for it. But it's just kind of one of those things where I'm just not comfortable continuing it. That being said, if you like Maiden Abyss, please write a comment. Tell me why you do, because I'm really interested to know where this series goes and if it's worth sticking around for. Just right now, I'm really not comfortable continuing it, and I say that with like, the saddest possible feelings. Like, I really, really wanted to like this series. Next up, we got One Piece. One Piece is One Piece. It's great. Carrot should join the crew. She's amazing. I've caught up with One Piece with Weekly Shonen Jump, and it's absolutely incredible. Zoe Island and Whole Cake Island has been amazing. This volume in particular is a really, really great volume for us Brook fans. Brook being the skeletal character in the crew. I absolutely love Brook, and he is he's the MVP of the arc. He has 2 really, really great moments in this volume, and yeah, One Piece is great. Definitely pick it up if you're a fan of One Piece. Please support the manga, support One Piece, and don't just pirate it. I understand it's about pirates, but please don't just pirate the series. But again, if that volume count intimidates you, I absolutely 100% understand if you don't get into this series for that reason. Speaking of really popular manga, we got One Punch Man Volume 13, and this is near conclusion or almost conclusion of the tournament arc, which I usually don't like tournament arcs in manga, but the tournament arc in this one was really, really good. I in particular really liked the fights. I thought the characters were interesting, and yeah, One Punch Man's awesome. I mean, not really much other to say than that, except that I can't wait for the 14th volume because it has one of my favorite characters on the front. I'm not going to say who that is for spoiler reasons, but you can go look it up for yourself. You'll understand why I'm excited for that one. Next up, we have Orange Future, which is an extra volume in the Orange series. If you don't know what Orange is one of those drama mangas that I'm like absolutely hype about. I'm really not a fan of realistic manga or drama or romance, but Orange is one of those rare cases that I cannot get enough of this series, and I'm so sad that it's so short, but I'm really glad we got this extra volume. This extra volume is about one of the characters named Sua. He's kind of the third wheel in the romance triangle between the main characters. And this volume in particular highlights and showcases some of the reasons behind the decisions that he made in the mainline series, which I will say is kind of a relief because there were certain points in the original manga where I was like, what is Sua thinking? Why is he doing this? Why is he allowing this? And it was really cool to actually see some of his reasonings in this volume. If you don't know what the original story of Orange was, I'm going to be kind of vague because I don't really want to spoil too much of it, but basically this girl gets a letter from the future, and in the letter it says, hey, there's going to be a thing going on today. Yeah, don't do the thing. Like, don't invite this friend to do a thing with you. Just, like, don't do it at all. Of course, she thinks it's a joke. She does it, and something horrible happens as a result. So then she starts to take the letter from the future seriously and starts to read more of it and follows it day by day, and it's really quite fascinating. And it has a beautiful take on the topic of suicide, in which it does it in such a way that I don't think
series like 13 Reasons Why and other shows really get. Most shows about suicide, or most stories about suicide, tend to glorify the subject and really don't delve into the seriousness of the matter. Orange delves into the seriousness of the matter in a way that I think is quite profound and healthy. So I definitely recommend picking up Orange if you haven't read the series. If you're into drama, romance, that kind of stuff, it's amazing. Hey, hello there. We got Ruby, volume... Ruby. It's just a single volume. I am going to be honest with you guys, I'm not a Ruby fan. I didn't watch the original series, but I picked up this volume in particular because I know some of my students did, and I was like, oh, hey, I got it really cheap on Amazon. It's a pretty thick volume, and I wanted to support manga and also have it in my classroom for my students to read. And I did read through it, and let me just say I am confused. This volume is not for beginners and newcomers to Ruby. It doesn't really set up the main characters that well. In fact, it kind of just like showcases little like side stories featuring them, which again, cool, like the art's gorgeous, but man, am I confused. This is not really a volume that is enticing me to go check out the mainline series. But that being said, if you're a Ruby fan, you're probably gonna like this. I mean, again, the art is gorgeous. So yeah, we'll see if any of my students like it. Next we have Silver Spoon, and oh my goodness, it is a crime, Yen Press, that this was not published when it was. So Silver Spoon is a manga by Hiromu Arakawa, who wrote Fullmetal Alchemist, but don't go into Silver Spoon thinking it's going to be like Fullmetal Alchemist. If you're a fan of like the characters and the drama of Fullmetal Alchemist, but not necessarily too much of like the magic and the action, Silver Spoon is going to be really, really for you. But don't go into it thinking it's going to be another like super hype series like Fullmetal Alchemist. It's slow, but slow for a very good reason. I will say I have a little bit of bias towards Silver Spoon because, as some of you know, I am a junior high teacher, but I am a junior high teacher in a rural area. So a lot of my students do come from farming households and farming communities, and a lot of the issues that they talk about are touched on in this book. The one I think that fascinates me the most is whether or not you should get close to an animal if you are planning to kill the animal. And man, that is quite fascinating. And the main character kind of goes through a bit of a struggle there. It's like, should I name an animal and get friendly with an animal that I'm planning to kill and eat later? Or should I treat them as just a product and be done with it? I love those sorts of questions. This is a really, really, really good series, and I am super excited to read more. That being said, though, this is published by the infamous Yen Press, which I love Yen Press's publications, but I mean, if you look on the back here, this is a $15 price tag at retail. Like, that's ridiculous. Yen Press, for some reason, is really, really like greedy about their prices. I think there was like a recent volume of Homura Tamura that was like $17, like a volume that's like not even like half of this width. And yeah, Yen Press, you really need to like chill on your prices, seriously. Next up, we have To Your Eternity. Again, another high recommendation from me. This one's kind of a weird one because it's by the same author as A Silent Voice, but it's definitely not as good as A Silent Voice. To Your Eternity has like really, really great moments, and they're just kind of like, not bad moments, but kind of like moments. Again, if you know the context behind the covers of these volumes, like, it's totally different. Like, I'm sure if you're like looking at this cover not knowing what the story's about, you're kind of just like, oh, isn't that nice? It's like a family meal. But if you know the story, you're just like, you're like on the verge of tears. You're like, no, please. Oh, it's so sad. And that is what this series is all about: crying and characters dying and you feeling like you want to just curl up into a ball and like never come out again. If you're sensitive about subjects like death and suffering, like basically if you're like, if you're sensitive about subjects of dying and losing the ones you love, like basically if you're anti-Game of Thrones, don't check out To Your Eternity. But if you want to go on an amazing historical fantasy drama ride, To Your Eternity is definitely one for you. And then finally, we have the Final Fantasy 15 comic anthology. Again, another awesome gift from my friend Ian. I can't read this, but I will say it's cool. I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy 15, of the Final Fantasy series in general, but especially of 15 quite recently. So this is a very, very cool volume. I just wish I could read it. Hey, thanks a lot for watching the video, really appreciate it. And if you picked up something this month or the past 3 months that you want to share, please leave it in the comments below. I would love to read your thoughts. And until next time, this is CJ, signing off.